The big awakening. That's something that the ancestors that were incredibly advanced for their time, the Mayans, talked about, which we're all moving through today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Mayan prophecy numero dos, number 2, and why specifically our ancestral trauma, these patterns that we're on, are even more obvious and painful today than ever. Aloha, Sadnam, and welcome, beautiful, beautiful goddesses. Welcome to the Summer Moon Movement podcast, where we have been exploring not only the Mayan prophecies that we are now moving through, but also the solutions. We've been talking about what it is that we can do to actually integrate technologies such as Kundalini yoga meditation, spiritual psychotherapy, to help us work through these prophecies and learn to thrive and take control and sovereignty over the only thing that we can take control and sovereignty, which is what? Our thoughts. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. This is a very beautiful week, a sandwich week. I was just sharing with my community members, women's community this morning in our sadhana practice, which is our daily meditation practice, virtual. So it's pretty awesome that we get to hang out with each other, do the inner work, and then go about our day. But one of the things that we were talking about was this week being such a important, like, in-between week, because as we get closer to March, which you all know I've been talking a lot about March and how important it is as it relates to 2023 and the transformation and the changes that we're all going to be going through here. But March of 2023 brings very shifts and important shifts in energy, where we have 2 planets, Saturn going into Pisces and Pluto going into Aquarius, which hasn't happened. These shifts haven't happened for like 20 years. And this month of February, especially this week, we're now moving from Aquarius season to Pisces season, and Pisces season is the last sign of the zodiac. So when you practice astrology, which is the most ancient science of the in humankind, alongside, especially with like technologies like Kundalini yoga and meditation, you start to really align with the rhythms of nature. So like for me, the beginning of the year is always like March, because it's really the beginning of the zodiac astrological year, as we end with Pisces season and go into Aries season. But we also have the equinox, spring equinox, which is a full rebirth of coming out of the darkness of the winter and moving into this new awareness, right? Hopefully, because if you're not evolving, you're dying. So why I'm mentioning this is because this week, as we move from Aquarius season, futuristic, trying to muster up the energy to make these transformations or changes in our habits stick, we now move into Pisces season on the 18th, which is like a very different vibe. And this vibe can put us in a state of consciousness where we want to numb ourselves, or we kind of want to disconnect and detach from the 3D real world, where we're being asked and we're being forced into a lot of fast moving change, whether we like it or not. So it's going to clash. The energy might feel contradicting this week. Like, what you have to get done, or you have the clarity on execution, but you're so stuck up on the how, and you're not connected to the why or the emotion of what it's actually giving you. Then you're going to feel really lost, disconnected, and you're going to feel like you'll never be able to change and transform. And I was just sharing with my community this morning, with all the planets in the zodiac system are direct right now. And that's very, very rare. There's usually like 1 or 2 planets that are retrograde, and they're going to stay direct until next month, while we're going through these big shifts and change in astrologically, which means when all planets are direct, like, it's all fast forward moving action. It's opportunities landing. It's where you've been stuck finally becoming unstuck. But the thing is that that's not enough, because you have to have the chi, you have to have the energy from within to be able to sustain growth, to be able to sustain transformation and change. And this is where we fall short as human beings. In fact, today what we're going to be talking about is the Second Mayan Prophecy that has already come into reality. And that is a big reason why we struggle so much, even very successful people, meaning what you might equate a success, let's say having a family, becoming a multimillionaire, having financial freedom. There are many people that perhaps have reached levels of financial freedom, yet their nervous systems are completely breaking down. They're in severe depression. They've lost their family because of their disconnection to themselves. They're on their 18th marriage, or their kids don't speak to them, right? That's not success. And ultimately, with the pressure of today's time, of the fast moving change, and the need for us to understand preventive medicine as well as how to manage our stress, has become more evident and more clear. And this is especially true because you know that my devotion and my work is fully dedicated to helping women break ancestral karmic patterns, okay? And I want to remind you that the science of epigenetics, right, speaks about how in all of us, we are created of a frequency of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Many of these thoughts, feelings, and emotions are programmed reactions, not responses, reactions to trauma. So if there was childhood abuse, if there was physical abuse, emotional abuse, if there was betrayal in relationships, any type of these traumatic experiences become energetic imprints in the cells that then get passed down generationally. Now, they don't turn on in everyone. And this is why you might say, why is there a family that the parents were overweight, but only 3 of the kids are overweight and 1 of them isn't? Why did this one get better genes? No, this one did not get better genes. What is happening is that the one that is not overweight has learned how to manage the stress so that the gene doesn't turn on. Okay, so the science of epigenetics proves that we all have these addiction genes, anxiety genes, if they were especially passed down from our lineage. If we have grandparents, mothers who lived under a lot of chaos, under addiction to cortisol because of the stress and lack of management, and especially if you've been through trauma. Trauma not only affects us energetically, but we know it affects our brain. And so these imprints then get passed down to us, but they don't turn on within us unless we're not managing our stress. And here's how people usually manage stress. They will drink the caffeine, drink the alcohol, they'll numb out, which is the danger of the Pisces season. All of us wanting to detach from the pain of the transformation that we're all going through. So what do? We numb out with drugs, with all sorts of different things, with porn, with social media, with many different habits. Some people might say their distraction is going to the gym, right? Are there better evils or better addictions than others? No. If an addiction is an addiction, meaning you cannot function without it, you're attached and codependent, it makes you your identity. Even like being addicted to going to the gym can really be harmful to you, because God forbid something were to happen to that possibility. And then when you don't go, you become angry, upset, and all of a sudden you don't have your identity anymore. And that's a lot of the deep spiritual psychotherapy work that we do also in my academy, to release ourselves from those identities that we harness and we like hold on to, like Schmeagol, you know, from Lord of the Rings. Like, no, this is my baby. I need to be this person, this broken person. And we're not doing this consciously. Of course, we're doing it unconsciously. So when we're not managing our stress, usually it's because of growth. Your business is growing, you know, you're aligning to a new relationship, you're leaving your business to start something new, or perhaps many times, you know, these memories are finally coming out of the subconscious mind, which are being played out in your day-to-day activity. Because ultimately, many people, especially the women that come to me, they might tell me in their healing work, I don't remember the trauma, or I don't remember the pain. Well, you don't have to remember it, because you're literally living it out every single day as your day-to-day experience, because your unconscious mind is controlling the show 95% of the day, which means the experiences you're having with people out here are going to continue to be the same if you don't change what's going on in here. which is what genes are turning on based on how you are managing stress, whether it's because, again, growth, or because your trauma is coming back. So that is also because of the big shifts in consciousness that we're all going through. And this is related to the Mayan prophecy that we're going to talk about today. But the Mayans, as you all know, last week we were talking about the first Mayan prophecy. And the Mayans were incredibly advanced for their time. They were prophets, which all of us are prophets. We just need to learn how to tune in, right, into that. And beyond that, they were advanced in many technologies, just not just agricultural and astronomy, but also in engineering and in so many different things that we still can't even understand today. And now we can look at these prophecies and we can see and verify how they've already manifested, or we can understand them to their truths, because there's a lot of misconceptions when we connect the prophecies with how we understand them as human beings. Like the biggest misconception, as we talked about, is how they are the ones who prophesied that the world would end in 2012. That's not at all what was prophesied. In fact, we talked about that first prophecy last week, which you want to go check out, because what we're doing is we're working through the prophecies and we're doing what they instructed us to do to be able to thrive and take sovereignty over our thoughts and our emotions, which ultimately emotions are the language of your ancestors, of these engraved DNA programs of I'm not worthy, of the abuse, of the trauma that gets stuck in our energetic field. And so one of the prophecy that we're going to talk about today was specifically mentioning the complete change of consciousness of humankind. And they actually referenced specific dates, which we can now go back to and look at some of the things that were happening during that time. So the first prophecy talked about the end of a cycle, right? This cycle of 26,000 years that would end, the cycle of basically how we experience time, how we experience this world and consciousness in itself. The second prophecy is a little bit more specific as it relates to like the actual changes that we as human beings are going through. And what's interesting is that it's correlated to a lot of science, which a lot of geologists and bioscientists have now verified with their own work now here in 2023. But it is also, of course, connected to spiritually what we're going through, and to also the ways that we can use ancient tools. So we merge ancient tools with today's knowledge to be able to, again, take our sovereignty back in our thoughts, emotions, and thrive, and truly set a new tone and pace for humanity, because this is not the first time this has happened. And so the second prophecy, they talk a lot about these times where we're moving through now, but a specific date, August 11th, 1999. And there's a lot of different variations of this. This is some of the information that I recently have found. Again, it's like putting puzzle pieces together, because a lot of the information, the real truth is in books or people that are actual elders. A lot of the stuff like on YouTube even, or things of that nature, they're not really current, and it's not accurate. So you have to kind of dig a lot for this information, but it was made like that on purpose. And so I've been digging a lot in this particular second prophecy, and it actually talks about what we're moving through right now, but that started in 1999. And it talked about how we as human beings, our behaviors would change. And there was a big eclipse that actually happened on August 11th, 1999. 1999, that's a very symbolic number too, because 999 is the number for ending of cycles, ending of chapters of closing. So this is what marked the beginning of the flowering of consciousness, or basically the beginning of the coming back to union, to self-awareness, to union of heart and brain, which is what we're doing here on the podcast. We're working through tantric practices to help you connect back to the heart and brain, so you can take sovereignty to your thoughts and emotions and get out of these patterns, right? And so they talked about this time where humans would either lose control of their emotions or strengthen their inner peace, right? This is the great crossroads, like I said, that we've been on. And this is not the first time it's happened. This is a 26,000 year cycle. It's happened before. They don't even know how it's going to end. The Mayans, they didn't say this is how it's going to end. They said, these are the crossroads. Here are the changes. So like, it's still based on you and me, based on how we do this work of self-awareness, of self-acceptance, of realizing our totality and our wholeness, where this boat is going to take us. Because ultimately, the reason why we're on a boat is because we are a society that has been disconnected from self. We believe our answers are outside of us, in a guru, in a doctor. And what that does is that it forces us to seek outside of us, ourselves, and become someone, instead of authentically get to know ourselves with these tantric practices like meditation, and learn to accept ourselves and learn to reprogram ourselves on the whole rituals of religion and dogma that tell us that there's a God that sits outside of us and judges us whether we're good or bad, and that we are innately sinners. All of that is being completely debunked. And through these tantric practices like Kundalini yoga, that we now have access to, that we didn't have access to until like the late 60s, we are remembering this, and we are understanding what this second Mayan prophecy is about. Again, there are those that are not getting on the boat. They're not practicing preventive medicine. They're numbing. The number one way people numb, sadly, and they still trust these spaces, is through pharmaceuticals. But even with the big changes that are happening, like Saturn moving into Pisces, I recently heard an astrologer speak about how that is inevitably leading to the demise of the pharmaceutical industry, and how many people are awakening to the fact that the pharmaceutical industry just creates clients. It doesn't give you cures and solutions, because it doesn't deal with the root cause of what you're going through, which is your emotions. If we don't deal with your emotions, if you don't take sovereignty over the only thing you can take sovereignty over, which are your emotions and your thoughts, you're gonna get physically ill. That every physical illness, mental illness, it of course starts with an emotion, right? And so there's going to be a big shift and a big awakening, if it's already not here and you don't see it, from moving from these pharmaceutical fast fixes to working holistically, which is what we do inside the academy. Because one of the things that I take you through is an 8-part process of dismantling, learning to work with emotions, the ancestral language, right, through specific tantric meditations and specific spiritual psychotherapy work, so that in the end result, you're sovereign of those emotions, right? If you actually do the work within the modules. And so the second prophecy spoke about this great crossroads that we're in, right? And it indicates a lot of the times what they talked about is now being, again, verified by scientists. I spoke last week about a movie that's out, and it actually has been out since like 2003. It's called something supernova, or nova, it's called. And even since 2003, remember, this big shift in mental consciousness was prophesied to occur around 1999. It wasn't a one-day event. It has been happening, slowly dismantling itself. In 2003, there's a work of scientists, actually the movie's on YouTube, you can go check it out. It's called Nova, where they spoke about the deep, serious problem that they were seeing, which basically they showed that the electromagnetic field of Mother Earth, we all have an electromagnetic field. You have an electromagnetic field. I do, and I have an aura. That's what you have as well. This plant behind me has an electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field is comprised of vibration, which is comprised of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Through science, again, it has also been proven that this electromagnetic field that we carry, which is our emotions, impacts Mother Earth. And you can prove this because you can check online. There's something known as the Schumann resonance, which I've spoken about many times. But the Schumann resonance is something that science tracks and measures. And it shifts and changes a lot based on what emotional state we're in. And it is connected to Mother Earth's electromagnetic field. Well, this movie, Nova, spoke about a time where the Earth would the electromagnetic field of Mother Earth completely disappear. And a big reason, and they were talking about this happening in our lifetime, which you're seeing the very big shifts in climate, in earthquakes we're having. Why is this happening? The Mayans knew about this change as well. And they basically spoke about these cycles, 26,000 years, where the North Pole or the North Node would transition and move towards the South. And then the South would then be in the North. This is why you see a lot of changes in Earth structure. Like at one point, like Sedona, I live in Arizona. Sedona is like one of the most magical places in the world. And I'm going to be there actually tomorrow. Very excited for that. My husband planned like a Valentine's Day thing over there. So I'm super pumped to be back in the motherland. But in Sedona, in Arizona, there's fragments of like pieces of conch, like shells and sea plants and stuff like that. And the reason is because it is believed that at one point, Arizona was actually connected to what is known today as the Hawaiian Islands. And that when we had these shifts in consciousness and in shifts in the structure of the electromagnetic field of Mother Earth, that when the North Pole went to the South Pole and the South Pole went to the North Pole, that of course these changes would occur, these earthquakes, these changes that we're already seeing that are inevitable. So they understood it as these big shifts that were happening as well. The way this prophecy is actually stated, though, they're also focusing on the center of the galaxy and the center of also Mother Earth. That's another thing. That's a whole other world that science has explored for a long time and is just now talking about. But the energy and what is happening within Mother Earth is also changing her electromagnetic field and, of course, changing our life, our world. This is why so many people now feel so much tantric pressure. Their nervous systems are flaring up. Their relationship to time is changing. Like it just feels like time changes very quickly. Well, that has to do with the physical changes that Mother Earth is going through because she's alive. That's something that our ancestors like really knew. And we're all awakening to that now too, where we're more and more of us, I would say, are becoming more conscious. And we are finding solutions. Like some of the big shifts that we're going to be seeing in the next couple of years, free energy. Free energy is inevitable because you have 8-year-olds in small villages in Mexico that are creating free energy solutions for their entire villages. So the way we've been raping her, abusing her to stay with the old because we are creatures of habit, and obviously because that 1% wants to keep the control and the money, that is inevitably going to fall apart. That's the big shift of consciousness between Pluto in Capricorn, which we're closing out, and now moving Pluto into Aquarius, power back to the people, back to the community. So they talked about this time where the galaxy would increase and accelerate in vibration, which is what's happening right now. This is why your nervous system is flaring up too, right? And why we're also feeling the physical changes, why so many more people are also sadly being impacted in their mental health. There's a big reason why suicide rates are up. If your epigenetics are flaring up because you're not processing stress, because you weren't taught about meditation, you were not taught about tantric practices that change the patterns and that give oxygen to the brain, right? If you were not taught about preventive medicine, and if you were not taught that taking a pill to heal your anxiety is like putting a band-aid on something that's not going to help, right? You didn't get to the root cause. If none of us were taught any of this, then of course, right, we're going to suffer physical changes. We're going to suffer all these other instabilities. But here's the good news, that we're also living in the age of Aquarius, where all the information is available to us, where practices like Kundalini Yoga, which we're practicing here on the podcast, you couldn't even have access to unless you were a guru or some kind of king or queen. So now we don't have that excuse either, right? So there's going to be, they talked about this time of major psychological changes, behavioral changes. And again, why are we also seeing the rise in suicide rates? Well, if our epigenetics are showing us our trauma and our memories, and then what are we doing? We're a society that lives on TikTok and on social media. That is like drinking vodka. If you don't have an inner work practice, you consuming a lot of social media, regardless of what it is like taking alcohol all day, because of all the information that you're processing. So again, the solution is not, I am going to ban myself from social media, or I am going to ban myself from consuming. The solution is preventive medicine. If these are big shifts in consciousness because Mother Earth is changing, because we're changing physically, then my old methods of dealing with stress is not going to work. I need to be able to include processes, breathing techniques, meditation, holistic practices where I can raise my energy naturally and deal with the pressures of these times, because we are set to thrive and to be joyful, right? So it's not an excuse, or these prophecies are not supposed to make us afraid. We just need to be aware, because once we become aware, then we can realize, hey, I need to make those shifts in my consciousness too. Grace says, hi, I've not heard that about Sedona possibly being connected to the Hawaiian Islands. Yes, actually. And especially if you go to Montezuma's Montezuma's Castle, which is right before Sedona. There's a lot more history and a lot more information there, where they have like a lot more of the hieroglyphics and in the caves, as well as that's where they actually found more of the more of the stuff from the ocean. But we took a beautiful Jeep tour. You can do these really fun Jeep tours in Sedona. They have like the 3 levels, like if you want to go on a super adventurous one, or you can do like a more quiet one. In either case, they teach you a lot about the history. And this last time we went for my birthday, not this January, but last January. And the tour guide was super knowledgeable, and she had lived there for a long time. So she actually took us to these places in Sedona, where there's evidence of how it was at one point under sea. And this is where the also stories and the herstory about how we were at one point connected. So it's actually really amazing. And for me, it made a lot of sense, because when I started my work with ancestral healing, I didn't know why I was being called to like specific places in this world. Like for me, it was always like Thailand. So I went to Thailand on my journey when I first had my spiritual awakening. I went to Sedona. I moved over here, and any time, I mean, I go to Sedona monthly, if I can, even 5 times a month, because it's a vortex of energy. The Hawaiian Islands, for me, they're very sacred. I've been there several times, especially Kauai, Maui, Kona. I don't do the tourist one. We don't go to the touristy one at all. But in these islands, there have been miracles that have happened to us. Like we've connected with ancestors, and we've physically have seen them, light beings, from the ethers, and it's just been life-changing. So my whole life, Peru, that's another one, South America, Greece. So I've all these places where I've been led to pilgrimage to. I now have heard that these places were at one point connected, and that when we had the Great Awakening 26,000 years ago, some people say it's 13,000 years ago, these continents, basically that's where the separation started to happen. And these ancestors, not all of them died. Like, of course, even in the Mayan world, they knew that they were going to be colonized, and instead of resisting, many of them moved to these areas, these places where I've been guided to go. I feel like the Celestine Prophecies, there's a movie and book about a gentleman who's being guided by a higher power. But these places where I went to, they were all connected at one point. And if you look at some of the herstory, because this is the whole thing, we have not even caught up to change our books in schools and universities. And I don't know if it's done on purpose to keep people asleep too, but like there is so much change that needs to be done in science books, epigenetics, what I'm talking about here. They're not even talking about that in medical school. They're not talking about the evidence that we have found in like Greg Braden. I love Greg Braden. He is a scientist also. I would call him a spiritual teacher too, but he does a lot of talks around the world now of all the evidence that he has found of just the way we were all connected at one point, that tell a completely different timeline and story about you and I as human beings and where we came from. And you see, all of that stuff is so important, because one way that we are kept in these loops of trauma, especially ancestrally, is by forcing us to forget our past, to be ashamed of it, run away from it, instead of honoring it and even wanting to discover more about it. Do you have to know everything about it? No, but it's so important to connect with your roots and to expand upon what is great about them. Yes, we have to work through the traumas and the patterns, and that's what I help women do. But ultimately, it's because we expand upon what is good in them and what focus on those emotions instead of just being on the pattern of I'm not worthy and all these other things. So the world is changing very fast. And if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, like Greg Braden is a great source. You can find him on YouTube. We physically have seen him in many of the conferences that he does. I took my son, he was only an 8th grader at that point, and I was like, you need to listen to this because you really need to understand how expansive this universe is. And it really changed his life too. And so he's a great resource. There's, like I said, that movie that you can watch from 2003. It's called The Nova, but it's kind of old schoolish, so it could get a little bit boring. But anything we've been told, especially mainstream or in school, we need to question it and we need to get curious, especially if you're like a geek like me. Like, I love this stuff. I love studying Mayan ancestry, the civilizations, how they thrived. I feel like there's a lot of clues and a lot of resources there and how we can use that today. In fact, that's what the Mayan ancestors said. This is why we're practicing Kundalini yoga, because they practice tantric practices to connect to a deeper sense of self, right? To be able to astral project. Like, people think astral project is just like something that new age or fake. I mean, astral projection is being able to leave your body and to be somewhere else in another dimension or physically in another place. And yet they fail to miss that the government, like the forces, have used astral projection since I was watching a documentary when Hitler, when he was trying to take over the world, like the Germans already were able to like astral project and be in the enemy's room as they were plotting out their attack. So like this has been happening since like 2030. I mean, I'm sorry, yeah, 1930, 1920, documented, right? So imagine like the advanced stuff that we still haven't been given access to, but we can all tap into that. But it's inside of us. That's the whole thing. Like, that's why these tantric practices are so powerful, Kundalini yoga, because you ground yourself. You find the resources, the answers, the solutions in here, not outside of you. That's the most advanced technology. Your heart is thousands of times more powerful than your brain. But we're all on these patterns of fear, of not understanding who we are, of not looking forward to an amazing future because we're so unstable in the nervous system, we're fried in the brain because of the trauma. So like, we're not even unleashing a 1/10 or an inch of our potential. But that stops, and that stops with our movement, which is what we're doing here, understanding the ancient past and their advanced technologies, to merge them with today's knowledge so that we can be sovereign of the only thing we can be sovereign of, which is our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings. So these are gradual changes that we're all going through. They're not like overnight, and we're going to feel this at a deeper level, especially like I said, in the next month or so. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Angel says, and it does work. Yes, it's like getting on a jet. I always say, instead of coming on a car back home, you're coming home. You just get to decide what vehicle you get to take. So now the Mayans are talking about this heart and brain connection. And that's what we've been talking about here on the podcast as well, right? What are the tools that we can actually integrate so that, yes, we know that this is a big shift in consciousness for humanity. We know that there's a cycle ending, and we know that it's happening also because of all the physical changes that Mother Earth is going through, that you and I are going through. So how do we respond, right, to these changes? So this is where the holistic work has been coming in. So as you guys know, as you beautiful ladies know, we are working every Wednesday with a specific meditation to help us balance a specific chakra. Now, if you get triggered by the word chakra, one of the most important things to realize is that you have to know yourself, and you have to know yourself as energy in order to thrive in this new age of consciousness, okay? You're not just a physical body, you're a vibration. And there are tantric practices to change the vibration change the pattern. Okay. So your chakras, we've been talking about them, are your brains or your energy centers, if you want to call them that. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who teaches meditation for self-healing, transformation, calls them energy centers because he says, like, people get triggered. I don't understand. That's their chakras, right? Like, it is what it is. So these chakra centers, they become damaged, right? So we've been working through each chakra center to help us activate them with specific meditations, so that the end result, what I want us to get to by the end of these this journey of 7 weeks, is to 8 weeks, to connect heart and brain, to feel activated within our energy centers, these brains, to get them to work again, to get off the freaking pattern of whatever it is you're on that's keeping you stuck and on a level of toxicity that you can no longer stand. And so this chakra that we're going to talk about this week is like important. It's key, especially to what the Mayans prophesized about, which was this big shift in consciousness of humankind and their emotions, right? And this is a very big part of what we do inside of Maya and the Academy, because the chakra that we're talking about this week is known as the solar plexus. Okay, the solar plexus is right below the heart space, and it's above, I would say, right at the belly button area, and it literally becomes 2 centimeters below the belly button area, excuse me, and it's the center of our physical body, and it's our energy. And this one, Jogi Bhajan, there's a really good quote that I always remember that he says, if you do not know to balance the 3rd chakra, you may have all the degrees, all the knowledge, all the money, all the beauty, but you shall be unhappy. And this is even more true today. Why? Because we are transforming and evolving from being logical minded, two-sided people to emotional sentient beings. This is why people are seeing synchronicity more, miracles. This is why, again, you have a doctor, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who tracks people's self-healing stories through meditation. This is why he talks about how in his meditation room, they get to a certain level of frequency. So when you meditate in a group, in satsang, in community, you change the frequency of the room. So if you change the frequency of the room, you invite also, if you're at a higher frequency of gratitude, of love, then what happens? You can invite that help and support. That's what I call my ancestral help. And yes, sometimes you can physically see them. And it's not something to be afraid of. It's something to understand that we have as a resource. In Kundalini Yoga, and of course in Miracles, it's talked about how we all have a legion of 40 to 50,000 angels that are here to help us. But we are not in that frequency. We're in the logical mind, or in the program, I'm not good enough, I'm overwhelmed, I'm unfulfilled. All these different things that we tell ourselves that keep us in the lower frequency, right? And so the solar plexus, what it does is that it is the shift in consciousness. It is our intuition. It is our confidence. It is our self-awareness. It's referred to everything that comes with your power, because it's connected to the 9th point. It's also known many times as the Manipura chakra. So you might have heard of that. But this is the center of our physical body, and it's our energy. And it's located right at the belly, right below our breastbone. Excuse me, I said that wrong, and heart. And this one is the one we're going to be opening up this week. Okay, tied to our emotions, to our confidence, to our self-love. All of the times that you're in doubt, it's because this energy center is not strong. And with the changes that we're going through as human consciousness, you're not tapping in to that creative power, to that intuition, to that inner guidance, inner knowing, inner standing, not outer, right? And that's why we don't feel secure. And that's why we feel afraid. And ultimately, if you feel afraid, it's because you're growing. We just have to transmute the energy. So when this is out of balance, we feel low levels of self-esteem. We feel the anxiety, we feel the stress, we feel the low levels of energy, like you can't get projects off the floor. Sadness, of course. Digestive problems are big with this one. Stomach complaints, aggression and anger. Okay. So Wednesday at noon over on YouTube at Veronica Barragan. You can find me, subscribe so you can be notified the minute that I do go live. Stay committed to this journey we're on. We're going to be practicing a specific technique to open up this particular chakra. So that, like we said, every week we're going to work through each of them so that we can have an activated energy center. We can feel more centered and grounded, and we can truly take sovereignty back over the only thing we can take sovereignty, which again is our thoughts and our emotions. So join me over there on Wednesday. If you need to catch the replays on past week episodes, remember, you can catch us everywhere podcasts are streamed, as well as on my YouTube channel and also on my Facebook page. So find us, subscribe, get notified, and join us. Now, if you're interested, of course, in doing deeper inner healing work to disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns, applications are open for the Sovereign Woman Academy, which is my group coaching academy. Now, within the academy, you actually work through my specific SWC method. These are the specific tantric practices, the specific spiritual psychotherapy that I did and then my clients have done to disrupt ancestral karmic patterns. What does that look like? Healing in their relationships, romantic, mother-daughter relationships. I wasn't speaking to my daughter. Now we're talking again. Thank you. Things like healing prosperity blockages, healing their lack of confidence and the worthiness, starting brand new businesses, entrepreneurship, healing addictions, healing the pattern of abuse as children. There's a lot of deep stuff that gets healed through the academy. One of my academy members said that going through the 8 parts is like going down the rabbit hole. She had been in therapy for a long time, traditional therapy. And she said that it was nothing compared to what she's been through in the first even 8 weeks that she was with us. Because what happens is within the academy, you're given actually 4 months to complete the modules, and you're given support and mentorship and coaching every week. Every Monday, we have a call where, again, you're able to ask your questions, or we go through one of the modules to make sure that you're integrating right. And so she was really committed. So she was somebody who actually stuck with it and finished it in 8 weeks. Most of the committee or the academy members, I would say, finished between 8 to 12 weeks, but you're given 4 months, right, to actually finish it. We don't want this to create even more stress on you. We want to make sure that you're actually doing it in a way where it's giving you results, but also you're not overwhelmed. And so she definitely was someone who committed, and down the rabbit hole she went. But the transformation and the things that have occurred have just been so beautiful to see and witness. And not all the time, like a lot of people, some of the women in the community have healed like their toxic relationship issues. I had one that was completely only attracting really toxic relationships, right? And we worked through that program from her family and ancestral karmic stuff. Now she's in a beautiful, loving relationship. They're actually even doing like a program together to help other relationships, which is really beautiful to see. I have another one who was actually in a very toxic relationship, and she finally was able to end the relationship and get herself out of it completely, because there was no, after the 8 weeks, because we always say don't make big decisions in the first 8 weeks that you're in the program, because everything's going to come up. But after the 8 weeks, she was able to finally end the relationship. So healing doesn't always look like how we want it to look, but healing is inevitable, especially if you commit to this type of deep tantric work, which is what Kundalini yoga is and what spiritual psychotherapy, A Course in Miracles, truly is, which I've been a student of since 2008 and a teacher for more than 4, it's going to be 4 years now. Incredible. But these are my relics. These are my tools. These are the things that I've used, again, to break through and to be able to take sovereignty back upon my thoughts and emotions and feelings, which is so liberating and the only way to live. That is for sure. So if you're interested in more about the academy, of course, check out my website, veronicabarraganiam.com/SWA. There's a lot more information there about the academy. There's information about the application process, so you can check it out there. And then the last thing that I will say, because I'm gonna forget, of course, on Wednesday too, is that for those that are local here, one of the things that I committed to this year was getting out and doing more in-person events, just because it's time and it's very powerful when we're also in person. Everything I've been doing has been virtual. And so the first event that we're kicking off this month in February, for those that are going, it is a intimate event. There is a limited amount of tickets that will be available, but the email is going to be going out today. So if you're on my email newsletter, you'll be the first one to know. And of course, those that are tuning in here today. But on February 25th, which is Saturday, the last Saturday of the month, I have teamed up with somebody who I love and respect more than life, which is my husband. And we are going back to this beautiful location in Paradise Valley where I once hosted a 3-day retreat. This location overlooks the entire Phoenix area, and it actually sits right underneath the famous Praying Monk Mountain. Gorgeous setting. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be offering our signature event known as Kakawa. So some of the things that have really transformed my life, of course, have been plant medicine and Kundalini yoga. So what we're doing is we're mixing and combining together the sacred plant medicine of cacao, which is not chocolate. It's actually pure richness of a herbal medicine that completely opens your heart up. We're mixing that with the Kundalini experience to help you bring together heart and brain and to help you disrupt these patterns that you may be on. It would be great if you joined us, of course, with a partner so that you can work together towards this beautiful union. But if you come, you don't have to come with a partner. You can come single as well, and you'll still be able to experience the benefits of both the cacao ceremony, which we're going to take you through a live sound bath. My husband is very musically inclined. It's a passion of his, and he practices a lot of different healing music that he can bring live, which will make a bigger of an impact. So it's going to be a full, beautiful cacao ceremony with ceremonial cacao, with ritual, with traditional Mayan music to really help open up our heart space. And then we're going to move right into the Kundalini experience. And towards the end, share in a group circle and community, whatever it is that you're ready to just release from your heart and make sacred there during the ceremony. And then we'll have water and yogi tea for those that are there for us. So it is an intimate event. Like I said, you can actually go right now to my website, Veronica Barragan, IAM.com/Kakawa. Kakawa, Kakawa. This is the Mayan word for Kakawa, which is Mayans were one of the first ancestors that actually used this special sacrament for heart healing, heart opening, heart connection. I've experienced several cacao ceremonies. I've also had work with cacao directly when we went to Mexico, Palenque, this last time, to actually be with the plant and to experience it, even not just in as a drink, but even to eat it off of the plant was just life-changing. And to mix it with Kundalini is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and now the time is here. So February 25th, mark your calendars for those of you that are in Arizona. Or if you're not in Arizona, fly on in. 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It will be a sunset, beautiful evening, and we will be integrating together so that you can level up and be ready for this mass transformative change we're all going through, and we're going to even experience at a bigger level once March comes. So check out the website for that. And as always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to send me a DM. I do read those, and of course, you know that I do respond to them, and they also help me a lot in what content to put out for all of you, to help you, of course, on your own journey of self-realization and of disrupting ancestral karmic patterns, so you can be truly sovereign of your thoughts and emotions. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your beautiful light. I want to make sure I didn't miss out on any comments. I don't think I did. Thank you, Norse, for being here and for the comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you all again on Wednesday. Have a blessed rest of your day. Sadhana.